And very good morning to Madam Ain and my fellow friends. Today is our turn to present, so my team and I would present this chapter 3, which is developing a consistent game plan. Alright, before we go further, first I will introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Isman bin Ismail with student ID 2019361517. Will present and followed by the 3 other presenters, so hopefully you guys will pay attention while we are presenting. Okay, for the first slide, to make you all clear about this chapter, I just want to make an explanation about what is moral reasoning talk about. So what is moral reasoning? Based on my research, moral reasoning is a study in psychology that overlaps with moral philosophy. This is because starting from a young age, people can make a moral decision about what is right and what is wrong. This is make morality fundamental to the human condition. In a simple word, moral reasoning can compute as the ability of someone to apply logic and moral theories to make a decision. So we move to the next slide. This slide overall are talking about steps in thinking through the moral reasoning. So here I already list 5 steps to make sure your decision are right to you take an action after it. These are steps you need to take seriously before you take any decision to get you right. So the steps are included: are any moral principle violated? Are any moral rules violated? Is this case an exceptions? Are the rules justified? And the last one is, how can the rules be changed? Alright, let's move to the next slide. I will explain to all of you guys one by one. If you guys got any questions that you all understand or not too clear, you guys can ask me by the end of this session. So for the first step is, are any moral principle violated? These steps are referred to the values and ethics associated with sport principle, whether principle is a basic truth, law or policy. The principle is the standard to define moral or proper behavior. For an example, for make you guys clear about it, is when someone or your friend maybe got into a trouble, you as a friend of he or she have a responsibility to help them out from the trouble. You guys can make a decision making related to this value, ethic and principle like I have mentioned before. So you guys have a choice whether help them or leaving them out. For the second steps, are any moral rules violated? On these steps, they are trying to telling before you are participating on something, you need to know the rules that can guide you during the game. The specific rules should guide you as you participate, and if they do not do, you need to address why they have an exception. These rules are governed to all behavior in sport to create sportsmanship among the athlete. For example, in football match, player can open the jersey during the game because it's violated to the moral rules in football games. So as an actions, a referee can give a yellow card to the player that are violated to the rules. Another example of moral rule is respect others, honest or telling the truth, keep your promise, and etc. So for the next step is, this case an exception. For this step, the rules sometimes have an exceptions, but the exception must have a reason or must be justified why they are ignoring the rules. The reason must be strong enough to allowing the exceptions in the game. The exceptions may have a conflict with the moral principles and also the moral rules. I give you an example to make it clear. For an example, most of the boxing athletes are consuming drugs to reducing their weight for entering any division to get a title. So they are competing in other division from their original division. They are taking the drugs for reducing their weight to make it faster, but it's allowed in sport, but cannot using drugs for enhance performance, but that is not allowed in sports. For the step number 4, are the rules justified? On these steps, when you are applying the rules, you guys must ask whether the rules is a good rule or not. Sometimes rules are harmed and also violated with one of your moral principles. You may truthfully say that is morally wrong. You have right on it. Even they got a reason on their rules. This is because sometimes rules are created not suitable for all the athletes who are participating. So to make this fair enough, you can say it's wrong. For an example, Muslim women are need to covering their aurat, right? But in certain competition, mostly in global competitions, they are not allowing Muslim women wearing a hijab for the reason because they said it's disturbing the performance and also may harm for the athlete itself. Right. For the final step, which is number 5, how can the rules be changed? If day-to-day rules are your personal rules, you can readily make a change. But sometimes in sports, this change mostly made by the fluent persons like politicians that have power to change the rules or improve the rules. The change they are made giving a benefit to other who are participating. For the example, nowadays football match have an improvement in their technology such as a VAR. This change has given a benefit to all athletes or the referee to get a clear scenes to make a decision. In this change, they also need to promoting for the main ethical moral principle, which is honestly justice, responsibility, and also the beneficence. That's all from me and my explanation about the 5 steps in thinking through the moral problems. Now I'm gonna pass to the next presenter to explain further about this chapter.
Thank you to Muhammad Rizman for your presentation. Assalamualaikum and salam Ramadan to Madam Ain and all my fellow friends. My name is Farhana binti Abdul Rahim and I'm going to share with you obstacle and fallacy in moral reasoning. Okay, before I start to explain more details in obstacle and fallacy, I'm going to explain the definition. What is obstacle? Obstacle refers to something that block or prevent action or progression. In this context, obstacle refer to something that prevents someone from carrying out a game plan of moral reasoning. So, what is fallacy? Fallacy refers to a mistake in an argument due to mistake in belief based on unsound argument. How could it be? This is because it derives from reasoning that is logically incorrect, leading to undermining argument validity. So let me explain to you the first obstacle. Okay, now I'm going to share with you the first obstacle is skepticism. What is skepticism? Skepticism referred to attitude of doubting or questioning towards particular things. This is because the person lack of confidence towards someone or something. It could be a statement. This is mean when you questioning the statement or the decision of someone, that is skepticism. Skeptics say that moral judgment cannot be reasoned over because the moral reasoning is more on expression of emotion or feeling. For example, Rizman's spectacle to his coach, Mr. Ashraf, when Coach Ashraf chose Adli as a best player, while for the whole season, Rizman gave the best commitment to the team, but Mr. Ashraf still choose Adli as the best player because Rizman's skeptical that Mr. Ashraf just be kind to Adli. Second obstacle is cultural and relative ethics. What does it mean? This is mean different culture have different standard, practice and value. As we know that different place have different culture. For example, in Sabah there's own culture, and when you come to Sarawak you have they have own culture, and in Peninsula they have their own culture. Okay, let me add on. Belief comes individually, as the right and wrong is depend on the culture of the community involved. Okay, for the example, when you go to competition at other country, you must respect their culture, and sometimes you may see that they have different culture that make you feel uncomfortable, but you have to respect them because you visit to their country and you have to respect the culture. Okay, the next obstacle is dogmatism. What is dogmatism? Dogmatism refers to narrow-minded or refuse to acknowledge other or any alternative. Dogmatism is when you feel strongly about the issue or you master in particular area, you confuse with the subjective certainty and objective certainty. This is means the person is mixed up the emotional and rational certainty. And they also argue that the reasoning is unnecessary as the answer is none. Okay, for example, in football, Rizman as a referee have his own power to punish the player, and Adli as the player didn't make a mistake, but Rizman make a wrong decision and Adli just want to defend, and suddenly Rizman give Adli the red card. And in this situation we can see that Rizman is dogmatism, because when Adli tried to explain what is actually happened, and there's nothing wrong with Adli actually, but Rizman with the power, he didn't want to listen to the explanation. Okay, now I'm going to share with you the last obstacle in moral reasoning, which is false abstraction of theory and practice. This is mean theory is just a theory. This is because there's no factual, realistics and practice. There's no proof that show the theory is true and the theory is not being practiced. So the theory is not accepted and believed as there's no solid or inadequate evidence to be shown. For example, ghosts. How many of you believe in ghosts? Just because you cannot see, then you don't believe in ghosts. Okay, now we continue with the next other obstacle, which is fallacy in reasoning. What is fallacy in reasoning? Okay, this is mean when someone use psychological rather than philosophical reasoning. And this situation, mostly people play with your emotion. People highly convincing not because what they say, but how they say that things. Okay, the way they told you something will make you trust them, and the way they express something will make you highly convincing them. For example, Rizman can say to Adli that he can shoot the ball without looking to the net, and Adli trusts Rizman, not because what is Rizman say, but the way Rizman told Adli is very convincing. That is fallacy in reasoning. Next fallacy is fallacy of authority. It is referred to something is truly or simply true because someone that have authority say it right or wrong. There is no supported evidence, but because the person have power, knowledge, experience and wealth, you trust simply to the person. For example, Rizman only listen to the coach because the coach have experience, and Rizman didn't want to listen to other opinions. Okay, now we go to my last part of presentation, which is ad hominem agreement. What is ad hominem agreement? Ad hominem agreement refers to when someone opinion or belief is wrong because someone is bad or disreputable, which is means you have nothing and you just someone that who are you like that, and the person is attacking opinion by discrediting the person. For example, when Adli want to share the skills to Adli is taller than Rizman. So when Rizman want to share the skill with Adli how to shoot the perfect shooting, and Adli argue to Rizman by how could you teach me while you are shorter than me and you are a new guy in my team. That it's ad hominem argument. Okay, that's all from me, and continue with Adli. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anabah, for the informative presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And now we move on to the next obstacles and fallacy in the moral reasoning, which is misplaced authority. Now, it is normal for humans to listen to those who are more superior, whether they have more experience, whether they have acquired high level of experience, skills or fame within their particular job or in a particular situation. However, it gets to a point where the athlete can somehow hold a huge or great power of manipulating and invite a huge number of fans into their endorsement. So for example, an athlete called Dustin Pedroia Sullivan, he advertised a tire commercial on the 5th of April 2008. Now there's a huge irrelevancy to his profession, as he is known as the second baseman in Major League Baseball. However, he still successfully made his audience believe that he uses the same tire and how there is a huge correlation to his success in the game. Now, another great example is by our late Kobe Bryant. there is nothing more entertaining than being able to watch your idol both off and on the game. And that is exactly what Kobe Bryant did with his advertisement. So what he did was he advertised one of the most popular video games out there in the market, in which the company posted on the 5th of November 2010. So as you can see, a legend in a basketball game, but he is not known in the video game. But most of his audience that watches him are young athletes and young adults who are interested both basketball and also video games as entertainment. So they will follow his footsteps by taking this information and applying the same way in their spare time, in their pre-game routine, or even post-game routine. Alright, if you look at the presentation right now, there are two arrows pointing out to three different types of authorities. Now, as a group, we did more research on this point, and we believe that it is related and it is the same, even though they don't use the same terminology. Now, we're going to talk about false authority, and it is defined as an authority where it is invalid because it is either dubious credentials, irrelevant credentials, and no credentials at all. So those are the three types of authorities that we're going to talk about. So the first one being a false authority with dubious credentials. Now, this is essentially occurs in cases where the supposed authority figure does not have some sort of relevant credentials, but these credentials have some of their questionable quality. For example, a homeopathic doctor with no formal medical training who is discouraging the use of conventional treatment is a false authority with dubious credentials. Next is the false authority with irrelevant credentials. So this occurs in cases where the supposed authority figure does not have valid credentials, but these credentials are irrelevant to the discussion at hand. For example, a physics professor who tries to give medical advice despite there's no medical training, so it is considered as a false authority with irrelevant credentials. And lastly, onto the list, we have a false authority with no credentials at all. So it is very self-explanatory, where it occurs in cases where the supposed authority figure have no credentials at all. So for example, a layperson, there's a nobody with no medical training at all, and somehow they give out medical advice based on their uninformed opinion, and so that is considered as a false authority with no credentials. And now we're moving on to the next fallacy. Now the next fallacy is what we call the appeal to force, or as if I would like to call it, the abuse of power. It is also known as the argument of cudgel. This fallacy occurs when someone implicitly or explicitly threatens the listener or the reader as a justification for accepting their conclusion. In other words, the reader or listener does not have any other option but to accept the one and only conclusion. Or in simple terms, when force, coercion, or even threat of force is used in a place of a reason in an attempt to justify a conclusion. This argument says that something bad will happen to the audience, to the reader, to the listener, if they do not accept or agree. Okay, I'll give you an example. you should choose to work overtime more, but at the same pay rate. After all, you wouldn't want to lose your job, would you? Another great example I want to share with you. A manager calls a player. He says to the player, I want you to injure one of the player from the opposition team. Then start a confrontation. Make sure that you infuriate the same player and get him or her into trouble. This is the kind of sacrifice that you have to make for the benefit of the team, or else you will not be in the team for the next game. And now, in continuation from the previous point, we move on to the next point, which is the appeal to pity and ridicule. Now, in this fallacy, it is also known as argumentum ad misericordiam. Now, this is a fallacy that committed when pity or any other emotion such as sympathy or compassion that is appealed to for the sake of getting a conclusion being accepted. Now, this is the perfect attempt for distraction from the truth by using pityness or emotions in general. This type of appeal able to manipulate someone else's feelings of pity or guilt to get them or the third party to support your point of view. Now, for example, there are many commercials out there, commercial ads and any type of other advertisements. They will, for example, they will show children from Africa. They will show that clip first before they will ask for donations. And now, if we try to apply this perspective into a sports and sporting event and sporting perspective, we can say that a player can head over to the management office to discuss about a new contract. Now, the twist here is that the player is accompanied by his or her children or any other family members. That is the tactic. And then from there, they will inform the management team straight away that they will not have any other alternate incomes if they weren't given a new contract. Now, begging the question is the next fallacy that we are going to talk about. The brand new boots from Bata is above the rest because it says in the advertisement, referee, I think you should have a look at the VAR because it is a foul, and the foul will be clearer if we check on VAR. Begging the question, also known as a circular argument. Technically speaking, to beg the question is not a logical fallacy. This is because in the strictest sense, it is utterly unpersuasive. So here's the thing. The thing that you're trying to prove is already assumed to be true. So you are not actually doing anything to the argument. It will be like saying the product is expensive because it says the price is the highest out of the rest. Now, with that being said, most of the supporting evidence are likely to be invalid, irrelevant, and most likely it will lead to a false information. Now, let me give you more examples. The first one being violent games can cause teens to be violent because violent teens play violent video games. So you can see the words there that are repeating, but at the same time it's true. It's just the statement is just true. However, the information might be false. Okay, the next example that I have is, it is common in any respective sport whereby an athlete will firmly manipulate the referee's decision by repeating the same point or argument repeatedly. By doing so, the referee might take the time to rethink and overturn the initial decision, just like I mentioned about the VAR earlier. Swiftly moving on to the next fallacy, and it is the equivocation. Now, equivocation is classified as an informal logical fallacy, or they are also known as a doublespeak. And so, equivocation is the misleading use of a term with more than one meaning or sense. It generally occurs with a polysemic words, meaning the words that have different meanings. And moreover, the fallacy of equivocation occurs when the conclusion of an argument depends on the fact that a word or phrase is used either explicitly or implicitly. They normally use in two different senses in the argument, and then such arguments are either invalid or they have a false premise, and in either case they are unsound. Also, equivocation is an ambiguity arising from a misleading use of word. So that is the simple explanation for equivocation. So, for example, a feather is light. What is light cannot be dark. Therefore, a feather cannot be dark. Now, the simplest way to explain this is that the argument is considered as a fallacious because the word light is first used as the opposite of heavy, but then it is used as a synonym of bright at the end. And now, on the penultimate fallacy that we have on the list is the psychological obstacles, also known as a herd behaviors. Now, if you look at the dictionary or if you look up the word herd, it means a large group of people, or the other term is normally used for animals, a large group of animals, and it is considered as together as a group and not separately. Okay, so herd, therefore, a better understanding, this is a fallacy that explains how humans tend to finalize our own decision making based on others. However, because of this, we tend to avoid making decisions for our own good. With the sake of others, humans will neglect personal needs and wants, which lead to a poor decision making in the long run. The idea here is that it explains how there are limitations of humans' will, which can be highly influenced by a large group of people. Okay, for example, we have demonstrations, riots, general strikes, sporting events, religious gatherings, and in general, just everyday decision making, judgment, also an opinion forming. Sadly, we have come to the end of the presentation. However, before we end the presentation, there is one more fallacy that we have to talk about, and that is the final comment on encouragement. Now, in this fallacy, the individual is able to reason morally. It only happens after an individual able to reason morally within themselves. So it is the process of moral reasoning that may assist you in fighting against your own prejudice, discard beliefs, even false premises, by being open-minded. Now, we will need the spirit and the courage to speak out for what we have reasoned, and it is the right thing to do. There are two things that are involved and related to this final fallacy or obstacles. The first being courage itself. It is defined as the ability to control your own fear in dangerous and difficult situations. Another terminology that relates to this final obstacles is humility. Now, humility is defined as the quality of not being proud because you're aware of your bad quality. So basically, you're humble and such. And that is it, the final fallacy and obstacles for moral reasoning. Thank you, that is all from me.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Ashraf bin Muhammad Shah. My metric number is 2019361533. As of conclusion, moral reasoning is key for the future generation. Although in simple terms, it means the ability to differentiate and determine what is right or wrong. However, as an individual or player get older, it has so much more meaning and how it can affect various factors. Indeed, the term moral dumbfounding describes the fact that people often reach strong moral conclusions that they cannot logically defend. Humans also tend to hold their decision based emotion when they should have used logic. Their choice is usually influenced by internal bias or outside pressure, such as the self-serving bias or the desire to conform. We believe that by improving the resistance of moral reasoning, better discussion making a high chance to success of executing an idea in the long term. It is given benefit toward self-need and one, and also not selfishly toward other. Furthermore, the 5 steps of thinking also can help to minimize any strike in order to make an effective decision making. I choose dogmatism, where the person feels strongly about an issue and refuse to acknowledge any alternative. This is a common situation faced by footballers either in local or international leagues. This event occurred when Portugal played against Serbia for World Cup qualification on 28 March 2021. At the end of the game, Cristiano Ronaldo managed to score a winning goal, but his goal ruled out by referee. Furthermore, he also get a yellow card for protest the referee judgment. This shows how the referee do not care what anyone say and refuse the possibility of error acknowledgement that he may be wrong. Now we will proceed to the video. For the next case study, an incident took place in Malaysia Super League, where Melaka played against PJ City. Around 81 minutes into the game, PJ City player Khairul Anwar attempted a simulation inside the box to earn a penalty kick. This shows Khairul Anwar violated the moral principle and rule. At the same time, he made a bad impression toward PJ City player. While the referee demonstrated the policy of authority when claiming that simulation is true, simply because he is someone in charge in the game. As a result, FAM take action against the player and the referee. Khairul Anwar was suspended for 2 games because he has contravened Article 59 of the FAM Disciplinary Code Edition 2015, which is on offensive behavior and fair play. While Muhammad Fairuz as the referee at the match between PJ City and Melaka United had been suspended from match duty for 2 weeks. Now we will proceed to the video.
Khairil Anwar seperti tadi, dan ini slow-mo yang akan kita berikan. Bagaimana ada sentuhan daripada Khairil Anwar dan juga cabaran. Oh, jelas di situ sebenarnya challenge yang dilakukan oleh S. Kumaran telah menarik kembali challenge tersebut.
That's all from us. Thank you.